if you don't make the unconscious conscious, then you're going to do what you've always done, and you're just going to call it fate. I just don't trust people. Why not? That's just the way I am. That's fate. But if you make the unconscious conscious, then you can start to shape who you are. Otherwise, you're just going to say, that's just how I am. And people who want to be in shape, they don't want to run. But you have to if you want to be in shape. This is the running of mental health. If you want to have a healthy body, you have to exercise it. If you want to have a healthy mind, you have to exercise it. And this is how you exercise it, by asking yourself these kinds of questions and getting down to the root of your personality, not just the flower of your personality. You have to establish boundaries. I mean, every house has a fence, right? You know, every soul has a body. There's always a barrier between you and the rest of the world. And as soon as you start recognizing that it is a choice, the more power you're going to feel like you have over your own life. And then the more empowered you are over your own life, the less you're going to start to feel the need to be afraid. And who has to be afraid? Weak people. This is why I don't trust weak people. Weak people have to lie. It's their only means of self-defense. They have to lie because they can't tell the truth. If they tell the truth, they're not strong enough to deal with the fallout of telling the truth. So weak people have to lie. And that's why if I come across a person who's a weak personality, I don't trust you. Because I know that you're the kind of person who's capable of lying. If a person is willing and capable of telling the truth, even if it's a truth I don't want to hear, man, I can't have you around me enough. But that's a metaphor for you too, man. Now you can take something that you presently are. You can't change the root of what brought you to where you are, but you can change the thing that it becomes. So there's something that's interesting about this, about the way this is phrased, because we kind of understand this at that superficial level, which is all true. This is all true. But he's saying that suffering is the substance of life. So what is a substance? Because what he's getting at here is really deep. Literally and metaphorically. Literally and metaphorically.
Like what makes life?
Okay.
So like suffering is the base of life.
So suffering is the base of life. We talk about things having substances. I hate the word, by the way, because in philosophy you do a lot of studying about the differences and the distinctions between substances and essences. And if you, I'll leave it at that. Speaking of trauma. And so, it's kind of like the stuff that life is made of. It's the stuff that life is made of. So life is made of suffering. And the root of personality. So now we're talking about having a personality. So your personality is what? If I'm talking about your personality, what am I talking about? Who you are. And how do you explain who you are? If I were to ask you, who is Miley's? Yeah. It is hard, because I was just, last period, I went to another classroom. They were doing mock interviews with 12th graders. And so part of this teacher's, a project that they gave them was to do a resume and to do these practice interviews. And then she narrowed it down to 5 finalists who were all applying for this fictional job. And then they had some of us come in as teachers and pretend to be a panel of interviewers. And then she gave us some sample questions that we could ask. And the questions that were on that page, they're really deep. And I don't know if a lot of times if we understand how deep they are. In other words, a lot of times the interview questions are developed by social psychologists for a very specific purpose, but we don't really understand what's really being gotten at with those questions. So for example, one of the questions on there was, tell us a little bit about yourself. So tell me about yourself. And so when I ask you that, I actually made notes of it on the page. Think about the kinds of ways in which you would answer that question. If I ask you, tell me about yourself. Oh, well, someone tell me something about yourself. But it's kind of like that with these interview questions. Tell me a little bit about yourself. It's a Rorschach test. It's the ink blot test. What is that you would tell me about yourself? Whatever you would tell me about yourself, that would tell me what you value. So if I ask you, tell me about yourself, and you began by saying, well, I'm conscientious, I pay attention to detail, then that might tell me, oh, you're a person who pays attention to detail. And not only do you value that in yourself, there's a really good chance that you value that in others as well. Because especially if you're looking at it in terms of an organization applying for a job, then you're telling me that that's probably something that you think that the company values. It's important to them. But it also tells me what is important to you. If you told me like, oh, I really like cats, that's the first thing out of your mouth. Okay, so that tells me that you're a person who's primarily focused on like personal life and I don't want to say hobbies, but you get the idea. This one was really interesting. I'm a supportive person. Oh, that tells me that you're a person who's going to expect that from your company as well, and you're going to. But then again, that also said that that's one of your values. So you can see a distinction between like a person who defines themselves in terms of their hobbies, or a person who defines themselves in terms of the things that they enjoy in life, versus the type of person who talks about their values, first off. And so how do you define yourself? By something that you've accomplished. I'm a Suhai grad. Do you define yourself by what your values are? I'm supportive. Or do you define yourself by your hobbies, the things that you do that you find interesting? Because the things that you find interesting, by the way, if we dig a little bit deeper, are going to tell us some other things about your personality, of course. But it's a good thing to kind of maybe take an inventory at some point and ask yourself, how would I answer that question? Because however I would answer that question is going to say a lot about me. It's going to tell me the kinds of things that are important to me. I could ask you, what's important to you? But, geez, you'd have to kind of make that up maybe. But if I were to ask you, tell me about yourself, that's another way of asking you the exact same question. But by asking you in such a way that you're more likely to be honest about it because you don't realize you're being asked that question, if that makes sense. In other words, if I were to ask you what's important to you, you would probably, as I've talked in the past couple of weeks about the difference between a persona and a shadow. The persona is the thing that you show the world. The shadow is the thing that you keep hidden back from the world. And you're both of these two things combined. You're not just one or the other. You're properly individuated, which is the process of integrating the shadow and the persona. If you're properly individuated, then you're going to be both of those things. But if I were to ask you what's important to you, what do you value, then you're going to probably give me the things that the persona demands. If I ask you, tell me a bit about yourself, some of that shadow is going to creep forth. It's going to show me more of the individuated personality that you are when you put these two things together. So I know it's a bit abstract, but what I'm getting at is that the things that we describe up here, those are probably the flowers of the roots of suffering. Meaning that the kind of suffering that you go through here that we've talked about, past partners, sexual harassment, loss of a loved one, pushy parents, those are all like the underground roots that cause this suffering, which makes it difficult for you to trust people. It makes you so that you're afraid to be around men, or it makes you crave attention. These are kind of like the flowers of the suffering, you might say. So how is it that you become a personality? Well, do you become a personality, or do you shape yourself into a personality? Well, you have to be aware of it first. In other words, that's kind of the whole point of those first 3 articles that we looked at this year. Trauma and how to overcome it, how childhood trauma can affect you in adulthood. It's to see, okay, so these things have happened, and this is what's kind of become of it. If you don't, and by the way, this all happened at an unconscious level, but if you don't make the unconscious conscious, then you're going to do what you've always done, and you're just going to call it fate. I just don't trust people. Why not? That's just the way I am. That's fate. That's just the way I am. But if you make the unconscious conscious, then you can start to shape who you are. Otherwise, you're just going to say, that's just how I am. Yeah, but the way you are, why are you the way that you are? It's too much thinking. I don't want to think that too much. Yeah. And people who want to be in shape, they don't want to run. But you have to if you want to be in shape. This is the running of mental health. Just like running is the exercise that you do for your body, this is the exercise that you do for your mind. If you want to have a healthy body, you have to exercise it. If you want to have a healthy mind, you have to exercise it. And this is how you exercise it, by asking yourself these kinds of questions and getting down to the root of your personality, not just the flower of your personality.
You don't express that you
We all have a reason for it. We all have, there's a reason, there's a why behind everything that we do. And oftentimes, I mean, and that, by the way, that's an important one, because it's like, I've been harmed by somebody in the past, and so therefore I don't trust them. So then when I come to you and ask you, so how come you don't trust people? That's a strange question, isn't it? I mean, if you really think about it, why would you tell me the truth? If you don't trust people, you wouldn't maybe tell me the truth. So it's like I'm setting you up to lie to me by asking you a question like that. And I don't know, you could very well just say the truth, which is, I don't feel like sharing it. I don't feel like talking about it. Oh, but come on, I'm gonna, tell me. And you might say like, oh, I don't know, just because you don't want to deal with it. But understand that that's who you are. You're a person who will lie so that you don't have to deal with things. Because you very well could just say, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, but then people are gonna bother me. Well, that's on them. And then you can practice setting those boundaries. Oh, come on, just tell me. Dude, I told you I don't want to talk about it. Stop asking about it. If you keep asking about it, I'm going to stop talking to you. Oh, dude, you have to be a jerk about it. You're not the jerk, man. It's them who's pushing you. I mean, if a person asks you, and then a person asks you again, and you tell them, I just don't want to talk about it, then you should probably back off. And if they don't back off, then they're the jerk, not you for establishing your boundaries. You have to establish boundaries. I mean, every house has a fence, right? Theoretically. I mean, even if you don't, you have a property line around it. Every soul has a body. There's always a barrier between you and the rest of the world. Everybody, there are always these natural boundaries. And so, if you don't feel like talking about it, tell people, I don't feel like talking about it. Oh, but you have to talk about it sometime. I don't have to do anything except for stay white and die, man. Everything after that is a choice. And as soon as you start recognizing that it is a choice, the more power you're going to feel like you have over your own life. And then the more empowered you are over your own life, the less you're going to start to feel the need to be afraid. Because you're going to realize, I have power, I don't need to be afraid. And who has to be afraid? Weak people. This is why I don't trust weak people. Weak people have to lie. It's their only means of self-defense. They have to lie because they can't tell the truth. If they tell the truth, they're not strong enough to deal with the fallout of telling the truth. So weak people have to lie. And that's why if I come across a person who's a weak personality, I don't trust you. Because I know that you're the kind of person who's capable of lying. If a person is willing and capable of telling the truth, even if it's a truth I don't want to hear, man, I can't have you around me enough. I can't have you around me enough. Because I know that even if I don't agree with you, even if we have called personality differences, at least I know I can trust you. A true friend stabs you in the front. It's the people who stab you in the back that you have to be cautious of. And so when you ask somebody, why are you this way? When somebody asks you, why are you this way? And you could just don't feel like talking about it. Oh, I don't want to talk about it. You want to be real brave. Well, not brave, but I guess really forthright. Tell them, I don't know you well enough to tell you. I don't trust you enough to tell you. But that's kind of rude. Yeah, isn't it rude to lie to people also, though? How can we have a problem with that rudeness? But yeah, there's always, if you remember from those first few articles, there's always a why. There's always a reason for it. Again, this is the root of your personality is your suffering. These are the things right here that are probably below the surface. The roots. I mean, how deep does a flower root go? I don't know. I've heard that the roots go as deep as the plant is tall. So if your plant is that tall, then that's how deep the roots go. I don't know if that's true. It sounds made up to me, but I don't want to go digging up plants to find out. But the concept is still the same. That these are the things that are under the surface, and if you want to change if you want to change the flower, I mean, in real life, you can't really change the root. The root is what it is, but you can change what you do with it. Anybody in here color flowers by any chance? For some reason, I fell in love with the idea for a while when I was in school. You go get a flower, and let's say you get like a white rose. You had to make a white rose into a green rose. Anybody know? It's pretty dope. You just put it in water and put food coloring in there. And the white rose will turn green. Yeah. If you put a a red rose into water, and you want to make it some other color, you just put in the food coloring. It'll mix with the color it presently is. So it'll be like a funky, weird color when you get done with it. But you want to make a red rose pink, you put in white food coloring. I'm assuming there's such a thing. I don't know. But yeah, when I was in college, I used to color flowers. I just thought that was interesting for some reason. It's like, wow, you can take a thing that's already established and then change it into something else. But that's a metaphor for you too, man. Now you can take something that you presently are. You can't change the root of what brought you to where you are, but you can change the thing that it becomes. Maybe, a past partner has harmed you, so therefore you don't trust. I don't know, maybe you don't trust, but now what can you do to make the world a better place? You can become a person who's incredibly trustworthy. You can be a person who stands for the truth. You can be a person who says, I was harmed in the past by lies, and so therefore I'm going to make sure that I don't perpetuate harm into the world. I'm not going to become jaded and angry. I'll still trust people, but here's the thing, you have to be strong to trust people. You have to be really strong to trust people, because the less strong you are, the more damage a betrayal can do to you. And so now I've decided, okay, I'm going to become strong, so that way I have the ability to trust people, so that if I do get betrayed, I can always absorb it. I'm strong enough to do that. But I'm going to give people the opportunity to also tell the truth. And I'll be the person who always tells the truth. So you can color that flower, man. You can become something better than what you've kind of been shaped into by that root. All of these things give you the opportunity to do that. The loss of a loved one. So now you crave attention. But now you can also be understanding of people who crave attention. And so you can give the right kind of attention. You can give a positive attention. Because once you realize that a person craves attention, now you can use that information for good or evil. It's up to you what you're going to use it for. Just like any information you get about another person, you can use that information for good or evil. You can use it to exploit them, or you can use it to build them up and to build up your own character to somebody who's forthright and honest and strong. But that's a choice, and it can be tempting. And by the way, if that person ever wrongs you, and now you have information you can use against them, now you have another choice you can make. Am I going to be the person who now does that and destroys a person and now makes them feel terrible about trusting? Or do I understand that this person screwed up, they did a terrible thing, but by doing that, I'm not only going to harm them by betraying their trust and things they've trusted me with, but I'm also going to harm the people that they come into contact with throughout their life. It's hard to think that far in advance, though, when you've been harmed, when you've been hurt. I get it. But, that's the difference, though, between a mature personality and, toddlers don't think like that. You take away a toddler's cookie, they want to hit you. Immature personalities can't project themselves that far into the future. And the more you can project yourself out into the world that way and understand the eventual consequences of every decision that you make, the more mature you're going to be. Better planner you're going to be too. The better business person you're going to be. Better fill in the blank of whatever career you want to do. But maybe ultimately the better family person you're going to be. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Monday.